Welcome, everybody, to Navigating Change, the podcast from Teibel Inc. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here, as ever, with the talented, the charming, the cunning Howard Teibel.
God, that's exactly how I was going to describe you.
Well,
as usual, you take the words right out of my mouth.
Trump. We call that the Trump.
You're back on opposite ends of the coast, Pete.
I know. My heart is just a little bit broken knowing that we're just talking and I can't look at you again. This is a great conversation we're going to have today with our very special guest, Linda Penland. And Linda represents two fantastic organizations, which we will be talking about today. Linda is the Senior Director of Finance Shared Services at Creighton University and the co-chair of the Unimarket NOW user conference, which we will be talking more about. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, we're delighted to have you here for a number of reasons. First of all, your experience in shared services from the finance side of the house. We're very interested in having a conversation about what you do and how shared services has impacted Creighton. We're also going to be talking about Unimarket NOW, this user conference, and Howard has been invited again, perhaps mistakenly. He's been invited to keynote this fantastic conference.
Can you tell that he likes to set the bar low? So that
He really does.
he really does. But what? In the end, it plays to my favor, I think.
That's what we're doing. It's all calculated. But Howard is going to be speaking at this conference, and it got us thinking, for our audience, and we see Unimarket everywhere. I go to user conference, I go to industry events, and Unimarket is everywhere. For those of us who aren't in the purchasing procurement business, I wonder if you could tell us first a little bit about Unimarket, the company, and what they do, what role they serve, and then we can talk a little bit about the role of the conference and what you're going to be sharing with procurement experts.
Well, Unimarket is a collaborative procurement tool. It's a cloud software tool that offers a e-marketplace and an e-procurement solution that allows suppliers to provide us with a catalog and to be able to do all of our transactions electronically. So we're able to place an order to Unimarket, electronically goes out to the supplier. If the supplier so chooses, they can also then electronically invoice us back for that order. So it's a full solution, end to end, as far as electronically being able to do orders.
So so Unimarket is the tool has allowed you to sort of batch all your providers and services all in one place.
Yes, it does.
Fantastic. So now, the conference, as co-chair of the conference, this is if I understand right, this is the fourth annual user conference for Unimarket. What is it that the conference represents? What's the intention of the conference? Who's it for? And what are you going to be sharing with the world?
Well, the conference is all about the users, and it's the existing users or any prospective customers that may be coming on. It's a great way to learn about the Unimarket company and also the tool that they have. So there's what we've done in the past is have a lot of interaction as far as with, we have a couple of many individuals that come from Unimarket, but their home base is in New Zealand. And we have a couple of individuals, the global product manager that's there, which is Justin Gillian, as well as Damian Hollis, who's the CIO. And they provide us with updates on what they're doing, what they're looking at going forward, maybe new customers that have just come on or ones that they're looking at, and the future enhancements that they're looking at for us for the tool. So it's a couple of days. We've expanded it this year, so it's actually going to be over a couple of days instead of just a day and a half. It's the equivalent of 2 days. A lot of networking with the other customers. It's a great time. We get some hands-on experience with the tool. If we're having difficulties with any pieces of the tool, getting our university up and running on that. It's great with the networking. The suppliers are there. We get to hear from their viewpoint, how they utilize the tool, what they would like to see us as customers doing with the tool and interacting with them. And so you get the full scope of things that are going on there. This year at the conference, we're doing, as you indicated at the beginning, Howard's going to be our guest speaker, talking to us about, change management, decision making, and that strategic planning. We're also going to have breakout sessions that are going to focus on certain areas of emphasis like accounts payable, the contract management, doing blanket orders, those types of things. And then we also will have some sessions where they'll be able to show us some of the new features that they're working on and talk about the roadmap of what they're going to be working on over the next year as far as enhancements for us.
It sounds like a great conference. I think the only thing that would make it better is if it wasn't in Nashville, but rather was actually in New Zealand.
Well, yeah, we've asked for that, but unfortunately, probably none of us as customers, our budget would allow us to do that. But boy, that would be nice.
That would be nice. Howard, you're going to be taking the stage there, talking about change and the role of change in the finance department. Let's talk a little bit about some of the hot areas you see.
Well, you and I have talked a lot about this over the years, and we have even done podcasts on shared services. What I'm really excited about, Linda, is that I think we're at a time in higher ed where the recognition of helping people navigate the change they have to get through to be more effective and efficient, this isn't on everybody's mind because we've seen lots of failures. And there have been, when I say failures, what I mean by that is for years, the concept of shared services is not new. However, there's a lot of institutions that are still yet to put their toe in the water to really do this. And you've got a couple of years into this, and I am certain that the process that you went through to have people understand how their jobs are going to change and how their jobs are not going to change and how to leverage this and how it's going to be in their benefit, there is some very intentional and effective things you can do to help people through the change. And what I'm excited about is that I think that there's a greater receptivity to this is a discipline that we have to apply. Just like we have financial disciplines, I think there are change management disciplines that I'm sure you had to go through at Creighton when you made that transition, Linda.
We did. There was a lot of, working with our constituents across the campus, and we did a rollout across our campus when we brought on the Unimarket tool. And also at the same time we were bringing the tool live, we also stood up a business service center. And the business service center was all around anything that's touching the procure-to-pay processes. So we definitely had our challenges, things we would do different next time, but we are... our service center has been up and running 2 years with the Unimarket tool. Things are going well there, and we are actually, as part of our strategic plan, looking at expanding our shared services initiative.
Well, what's interesting for me is I think the three topics that Brian Sweeney and you and I have talked about that are, I think, essential to be able to implement a shared service strategy and integrate that with a new tool like Unimarket is this idea of the disruption that the change produces and how do you navigate that? How do you effectively make decisions around the change where you're really articulating the benefits, but you're also looking at what are the problems we need to solve here? And is our strategy big enough? Should we be thinking more broadly, more narrowly? And then finally, framing it in the context of larger strategic planning. There's institutional strategic planning, but there's also divisional strategic planning. Within a finance division, work with lots of institutions that have taken that step. So I think what they're going to hear from me, and I'm sure from others, is a holistic approach. And in many ways, that's what I think you're representing, being both from a shared services and using Unimarket, is that this is about a holistic approach to procurement. And strategic sourcing is another example of that. So I'm very excited about helping people take the next step from a leadership standpoint and also from a change management standpoint to figure out how they want to transition their campus to be more holistic around procurement.
One of the, it's interesting. One of the sort of, I think it's a military axiom that when you're doing risk assessment, you're not just looking at the potential problems coming up over the horizon, but the problems coming up over every potential horizon. You mentioned that there were things that you would have done differently, Linda, when you rolled this out 2 years ago. I wonder if you could just share a little bit more about what are those challenges that you ran into and things you might have done differently, and give us a little bit of an idea of some of the particularly the leadership, organizational, structural challenges that were difficult for you at Creighton.
I think one of them was communication. and just having everyone on campus buy into the process of they all wanted to use the new tool. Going to a shared services model with our business service center was something they were a little more hesitant. They wanted to sit back and wait and see, let someone else go first. So there's a lot of angst around that, and it's very difficult, I found, getting everyone communicated to at the right time. What is that right time? I think in hindsight, more communication up front. We took the approach that we were automating several of our processes. The tool helped us automate some of those, and we were using a pilot group. And to not interrupt our academic side of our campus, we started with the operations areas. That worked well in some cases, and bringing those on, and that was also our pilot group. In hindsight, the academic side of our campus would have liked to have been right in the forefront as well.
Well, what's interesting, Linda, is sometimes you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't, right?
Right.
So that I've seen in helping with lots of change projects is that you make a choice that we're gonna pilot a group to build some momentum around potentially low-hanging fruit or where we already have buy-in, and in the end, the pros of that is that you can do a great job there. The cons are, there's no question, people are going to look at that and some will say, it would have been nice if maybe we got a chance to go with you. Had you done the opposite, it could have equally played out that people said, you should have done a pilot and started that way. So I think that what's very interesting, it's very easy in hindsight to look back and, from a lessons learned standpoint, say we would have done it differently there. My guess is at the time when you were looking at this, given all the other projects you had going on, it was the right decision at the time. Mm-hmm. And to me, the message I want to convey, and I'm always looking to convey to people and organizations, it's not so much about getting it right. It's about when you put something in place, you're flexible enough to then recognize how you want to do course correction. And I'm certain that you had more work once you got the project started to figure out how to navigate it versus figuring it out up front. I think the mistake we make, Linda, and I'm curious what you think about this, is I think we have to have it all figured out so that we don't have these kinds of disruptions or people not being happy. And I think the truth is we need to accept the fact that when we put any change in place, there's going to be a subset of people who are going to look at this and have a hard time with it. And what we need to do is, instead of saying, oh, somehow we failed, to recognize that as an opportunity to get in there and get closer to them and to work closely with them. And that's how great projects succeed. It's not in the conception of it, it's in the implementation of it.
I think you're right on, Howard, that we did, as we're working our way through the project, had to make changes, make adjustments. And I think leading that project, I was well aware, there's going to be, everything won't be perfect. But I think that was one thing our campus was expecting, is that we had everything figured out, all the answers. And that's a cultural change. And I think just with the change management is getting people on board to accept that there will be bumps. Everything won't be perfect right out of the gate. And we will have to make adjustments. Yeah,
exactly. I just had a conversation this morning with another institution, and we were talking about a transition they're going through with using Workday. And in this case, so I was raising the idea that we lie to people up front and say how wonderful it's going to be, and then that's why they're so deeply disappointed, because we don't tell them the truth. It's going to be hard. And the interesting thing they came back with is the project team leaders said to me, they really dislike the current system. And the truth is, as a result of that, they are so welcoming of a change. So it really depends on sort of the cultural perspective people have of what they currently have. And if they know they can't do the things they want to do, the system is slow or doesn't work well, and you offer up a solution that's better, it's going to make the acclimation much easier. On the other hand, in most places, people are comfortable or complacent with what they have, and asking people to learn new things can be hard. So I think that the nature of the change you went through It's precisely it like there is a roadmap that you navigated, and I think your leadership is probably the thing that for you and for me leading projects, you grow from this. You really learn what it means to step up and at times be directive and say, we're doing this because it's the right thing to do for the institution. And other times, you bring people together to say, what do you think? And, we're going to be flexible here. Sometimes we're not truthful about where we want input and really will take the input, versus asking for input, but really we've already decided. That's a classic dilemma in leading these kind of change projects. But I'm certain you grew from the experience, didn't you?
Oh, definitely. Learned a lot.
One of the characteristics that Howard has talked about and written about, I think at some length, is this idea of kind of the phases of adoption, where you have one. It's easy to start an initiative, but it is a whole different expertise to build excitement around that initiative and establish momentum, right? Launching an initiative is challenging. Building momentum and getting everybody else bought in is something that requires a whole new level of expertise. Howard, can you reflect on that a little bit and how that applies to what we're talking about here?
Well, I think this what you just described, and I'm sure Linda was nodding her head too. It's getting people to buy into a concept, versus buy into the actual change and make it their own. It has everything to do with finding a way to have people have the experience that it was their idea, or that there's a piece of it that became their idea. The piece that we struggle with is we don't ever want anybody to be unhappy. Right? And because we don't want to make anybody unhappy, we shoot ourselves in the foot, and we somehow forget that the role of leadership sometimes is to step forward and say, I understand you don't like this, and for the institution, this is the right thing, and be willing to take the heat for that. And I know presidents have a hard time sometimes with that. Cabinet members have a hard time, and part of the acclimation to better and faster change is being willing to put a stake in the ground and say, we're doing this because it's the right thing. And here's where we're looking for your input so that you can feel like you are part of the process. So Linda, when you think about your shared services, what's the next big step for you in terms of the thing you'd like to see happen on campus that would continue to move it in a positive direction?
I think it's expanding on our shared services model. There's more things besides just the pure procure-to-pay items that would benefit from a shared service, or just more of the openness to discuss. Maybe there's items that need a process improvement, not necessarily being centralized in a shared services center. But it's just that openness to change and actively helping with that.
That's really great. What's interesting is so many technical implementations replace one system for another, but what we don't do is modify the business process. And that often plays catch up behind the scenes. And it really comes from people's willingness and interest to be part of that conversation. So what you're describing to me makes such perfect sense. How do we broaden our ability to say, in what other ways can we be thinking about sharing functions? How do we engage more people, more faculty, more administrators in the process, utilizing the tool more effectively? So this is one of those things that, as long as you're as Creighton, this is going to be something that you're going to keep working towards. We never get to an endpoint on this one. When you finally turn the reins over 20, 30 years from now to the next person, they're going to be inheriting the same thing, but with a slightly different variation on change management issues. Right, 20, 30 years, right? Is that fair? You're laughing,
That's fair.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a great conference and a great lineup of other speakers, including, and I'll say honestly, the very talented and charming Howard Teibel as keynote. The conference takes place now. Linda, please check me as soon as I start lying here. But it is in Nashville. It starts Wednesday, October 22nd through Friday, October 24th, and it's open to all. Right, Unimarket customers. Register now, yes?
Yes, I think it's going to be a great conference. I think Howard's keynote speak is going to be right on. That's one of the things that we've all benefited from in the past conferences is talking about how we each have implemented the tool and how we did it differently, how we worked it through our campuses. So the whole change management discussion with the tool is perfect for anyone that's thinking about Unimarket or is already on or just recently getting ready to do their implementation. It's going to be a perfect time for the discussion.
Well, it really is, and I love the approach of a technical user conference that deals both with how you use the tool and how you implement the tool, the effect of the tool on the culture that you're establishing. It is a great balance, and I will say we'll put a link to the registration page in our show notes here on the website at teibelink.com, but it is a very affordable conference with a lot of meat. It looks really great. So, Linda Penland, thank you so much for joining us from as a representative of the conference and from Shared Services at Creighton. It's great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And Howard Teibel, do we have anything else for the people?
No, I think you ending on how charming I am is perfect.
That's good. I'll make a note. Boilerplate. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us today. You can find out more about the show at teibelink.com. You can subscribe for free. Just search for Navigating Change in the iTunes podcast directory, and you can subscribe to us. Make sure you don't miss a single episode of the show. You can reach out to us on Twitter at Howard Teibel or at Pete Wright. We'd love to hear from you. And on behalf of Howard Teibel, I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next week on Navigating Change, the podcast from Teibel Inc.